This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
The Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Today's guest, wonderful Dr. Dave Whitlock. What a story. If you think you've had some troubles along your career, listen to Dave's story. He's had more than his troubles. He went bankrupt a couple of years into practice. How do you recover from that? How do you buy a practice? Oh, wait, buy a second. Oh, wait, buy a third practice. 5 kids. Practice in every major city you can almost think of. Settles in rural Kentucky, Ashland, Kentucky. Phenomenal story. You're going to like this. We're going to make this into 2 parts. One of the nicest guys I spoke to in a long time. Great story. Great feel. Got to get him out of that last insurance plan he's in. He's only in one. But he has a clear direction of where he's going and what he's doing. And I think this is one of those things, if this happened to him, my life ain't that bad. As always, Fee for Service Dentist Podcast brought to you by Kettenbach Dental. They are excited to announce the first major advancement in fluoride varnish. It's called Profacel. It's no longer with alcohol or resin. Instead, patients will feel smooth and silky because it's done with a mucoadhesive dimethicone gel. No more grit. Contact Kettenbach today for more details and do more varnishes that patients will appreciate. Call 877-532-2123. Hope you like the episode. If you do, click like, share it, subscribe, share it with your friends. It's on YouTube. It's on all things, anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, iTunes, etc. iTunes still at this point has 2 of them, but it's the same show. It's the same episode. We haven't been able to get Apple to combine them all into just one, even though that's what it is. If you don't like it, well, please contact me. Let me know what you don't like or what you do want to see. I'd be happy to try to help you out. 607-624-2962. That's my cell phone. You can reach me. Text me. Hit me up. sunnyspira@gmail.com. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show, folks. Happy to do it. Love doing it. Have a great one.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast and these are our stories.
Welcome to the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spira. Special guest tonight is Dr. David Whitlock. He has a fascinating story. Unfortunately, I started talking to him offline. I almost lost track of time. It was so fun. So this is going to be a great episode, okay? And you know I'm not the king of hype. This is just going to be a great show, and we're going to have multiple shows. There's so much to talk about. Let me give you a little background. This is going to sound like I, Dr. David Whitlock, have been in private practice for 17 years. Graduate of the VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, in 2007, right before the drop in things. I have practiced in Phoenix, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Fort Collins, Colorado, and also Raleigh, North Carolina, before settling in Ashland, Kentucky. Let me read those cities again, because it's a who's who of big cities. Phoenix, Dallas, Oklahoma, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Raleigh, North Carolina. Then, after having practiced in a heavy populated areas for most of his career, he and his wife decided they wanted to change of pace and move to a more rural community. He currently owns and operates 3 dental practices in the area, and they have 5 children ranging in age from 20 to 10. 3 daughters and 2 sons. So this man is a busy man. Okay. So let's talk. Welcome, Dr. David Whitlock. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing wonderful. Appreciate you having me.
I've been stalking him for a couple of years. I do want to just come totally clean.
Sure.
And the one time he said, Oh, my kids in my life right now, I can't breathe. Well, now that I have his file, I get it. I get
Yeah,
it. There's no makeup. I understand.
no worries.
So talk to me. So let's just get a little brief background because there's so much to cover. All right. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Southern California.
All
I
right.
lived there,
SoCal.
yeah, I lived there till I was 17. Lived in Orange County, city of Orange. Lived there till I was 17, and then my senior year of high school, my dad's job transferred him to the Phoenix area. So
Wow.
I
Okay.
finished high school there and kind of, stuck around that area for a little bit.
Okay. All right. And your wife is from?
She's from Tempe, so she grew up in Tempe. Uh, Funny enough, she actually lived in Cincinnati, which is about 2 hours from where we are now. She lived there till she was 8, and then her family moved out to the Phoenix area. So that's basically where she grew up.
All right. So we got a
Both,
couple quote
yeah,
immigrants to the Phoenix area.
that's right. We
Okay.
both we met each other while we were going to school at Arizona State.
All right. Arizona State, little Sun Devil action. Wonderful.
That's right.
Bobby Hurley doing a
Big
great
fan.
job. They should be
That's
good
right.
this year. It's got a nice
Yeah.
class coming in.
Yes, he does.
They're going to be good, but I'm a Syracuse guy, so let's hold off on
Okay,
that.
all right, fair enough.
Let's just hold off on the Arizona State because
Right
I got to see what team we have on the floor. We have some question marks, but we're
there, you
looking.
go.
All right. So why dentistry? Let's just go there.
That's a good question. I don't have any family that are dentists, so this
Right, me
wasn't
too.
my dad's a dentist or my uncle's a dentist or my favorite this guy or that guy's a dentist. Truth be told, I was going to school, undergrad, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my mom, actually, we're on the phone one day talking, and she said, you should consider going to dental school. And I said, why would I go to dental school? And she said, it's a good gig. She's like, they make good money. You work for yourself, it's in healthcare. And I thought, all right, I'll look into it. And seemed to make sense to me. So I did it. Went through the prereqs and got in and went to dental school.
That's what my dad did to me. Almost the same thing. I was a little younger.
Yeah.
He was like, "Why don't you go be a dentist? It'd be a better lifestyle." I was like, "Whatever that means, sure."
Yeah, sure.
And I just found him. I had not a flipping clue what I was getting into.
Oh, me neither. Like zero, none. And
Yeah,
it was
if I knew that I
fairly
had to
apparent.
have like artistic talent, I would have said this ain't for me.
Yeah. No,
You
it
know?
was fairly apparent I had no clue, but by the first decade of me practicing, but that I didn't know what I was getting into. But nonetheless, that's how I did it.
All right. So when at what point were you sophomore, junior? When did you decide?
As far as an undergrad,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd been probably about my sophomore year. So I'd thought about maybe going into journalism or doing something like that, and then once I decided on the dental school route, funny enough, my fiance, or now my wife at the time, she said, she goes, don't get a science degree. She goes, just get a degree in whatever, do something you like. You're going to take the prereqs and go to dental school anyway. So I got a history degree from Arizona State because I like history and I enjoyed the classes and took my prereqs at the same time. So I was able to finish it up in a
Well, that
couple
probably
years.
ate up all your whatchamacallits, your electives, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
So
for
worked
an
for me.
elective, you're taking organic chemistry.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, physics. Yeah.
Kids in the class are like, "What the hell's wrong with you,
Yeah.
man?
Who is this guy? It's like, oh,
Go
went from my
take voices in
anti-Semitism
literature or
class,
something."
yeah, to organic chemistry. So go figure.
All right, so dental school's in, and where did you go to dental school? You went to, excuse me, VCU. Why
I went to
VCU?
VCU. They accepted me first and foremost. So that
That's
was
a
a
good
huge
reason.
plus. Yeah, that was a big deal. My actually my parents at the time, my family were living in the Richmond area. And
Beautiful
so
area. Yeah.
it is beautiful. And I didn't appreciate it for when I was there,
Right.
unfortunately. It really is a pretty part of the state and a pretty part of the country. But I was from out west, and so every school I applied to was out west, except for VCU was the only one I applied to on the East Coast. And that's the one I got into. So that's where I went.
Okay. Dental school. Any stories or anything out of dental school out of the ordinary?
Oh, all of dental school is out of the ordinary. I mean, I got oh gosh, I'd keep a list of stories of stuff that happened to us in dental school that I probably shouldn't repeat. You're a bunch of 20-something kids out there.
When
Raising.
when did you get married? Because you said we. So did you get married?
Well, I was married in 2001 and I started dental school in 2003. So I went to dental school married.
Gotcha. So I got married after my freshman year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we did our first year just the two of us, and then started having kids after that. So my daughter was born the summer after my first year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's taking a big bite of the apple. I marveled. We had a gal in our class and she was pregnant, and she was a foreign trained dentist. So this was our junior year. She joined our class. We didn't know her well yet. And all of a sudden we see her. She left on a Friday or Thursday. We didn't see her. Had her baby. She was back in class on a Tuesday. And I remember going, how is this possible?
That's intense.
How is this possible? Just incredible work ethic. But,
Yeah.
and at the time, our class was still a little more male than female. Like my son's class that graduated, I think was the first class that was more female than male.
Okay.
Every class after that, the female numbers have increased over the males. So
I was very
55 to
surprised at
60.
I was pretty surprised at the number of females in my class.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was half, but it was probably, I mean, a third at least.
Yeah.
Which
2007.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
It's coming. I mean, now it's their majority. In Buffalo, they're well over 50%.
For sure.
Okay, so you have a child, you're in dental school, etc. So you're looking at graduating. What's your first thought? Get a job, associateship? What's your first thought? Finishing up.
So being that I knew, I had it locked in, we were going back to Phoenix. That's where we wanted to go. That's where we wanted to be.
Well, you know what? It makes sense though, because that's where you met. That's where quote you're both from at that point.
Yeah. Right.
Makes sense, right?
And, and again, I was told and I believed it was, go wherever you want to live. You find a nice place to live and you can set up shop and you'll do just fine. So every time we would go back to visit family, I mean, I was in and out of dental offices. I was emailing dentists, hey, can I come and shadow? Can I come and take a look? I'm a second-year dental student, third-year dental student. And, I was in and out of offices every time we went back to visit. In my head, I thought, somebody will hire me. Somebody will be looking for somebody and, gets me a chance to see what's going on.
So you're literally knocking on doors.
Oh, well, yeah, I would send cold emails. I mean, while I was in school, I'd look up a dental office, pull up their website, find a link to email and send an email. Hey, I'm a second-year dental student, coming back to visit family, would love to come and see your office. And whoever would have me, I'd go.
So ballpark, just so people understand.
Sure.
What would you say? I mean, this is probably just going to be just off the cuff, but if you sent out 50 emails, how many responded, and then how many did you go see?
That's a good question. If I had sent out 50, I bet 10 would have responded, and I would probably get into 5.
But isn't that disgusting? I mean, but I'm serious. Even if you just say, hey, thanks, meet you, welcome to the area. If you come, we're not really looking. Just a response, just enough respect to another professional. Because I'm appalled at the lack of just responses.
Sure.
But everyone says the same thing. The dentist, I knocked on 10 doors and I met one dentist.
Yeah.
It's like,
and to be honest, I've even found the same looking for associates. I mean, I would, this is recently, I'll get on and post a listing, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And I'll have somebody respond, hey, I'm interested. I'll respond back same day. I mean, I respond back immediately because I'm desperate. I need help. And so I respond back immediately, never hear from them again.
Right.
And that's happened to me more times than it hasn't.
And this is not an Indeed. This is not Indeed.
No. These are on, I don't know, dental headhunters, whatever you want to call
it.
But
that's par for the course like Indeed, but this should not be the par for the course with professionals.
Agreed. Totally agree.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, it was a problem back then and it's a problem now, for sure.
It's almost like, listen, you got KFC's secret sauce and nobody can come in and get those 7 herbs and spices.
That's right. Yeah, forget about it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
It's not rocket science, man.
But, I mean, it was, so yeah, I was in and out of offices, and there were a couple of really nice dentists that would let me come back. Every time I came back, I'd go in and see them, so I saw
that's
them
good.
3 or 4
Thank
times,
God. Yeah.
During my schooling career. I didn't end up working for any of them, truth be told, but, got my foot in the door and got me to see some stuff that I hadn't seen in school for sure.
Right.
So, that was kind of my experience as far as, job hunting and looking at while I was in school.
Right. Okay. So you're doing that. You have some success, but the typical numbers in terms of, because I just
Right.
want people to hear it again. The response, don't be discouraged if you send out 20 emails and you only get 3 responses.
Oh yeah, that's what
Really.
you should expect.
Yeah, just don't feel bad about it.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it is par for the course.
for sure.
So what ends up happening? How do you find your job? What happens?
So I found a practice, and I was ready to buy right out of school. That's what I wanted to
Oh,
do.
wow.
I
Okay.
didn't want to work. I didn't want to be an associate. I wanted to own my own practice, and I wanted to get after it day one.
No residency, right to work.
No, no,
Okay.
I was done with school.
Go
I'd
for it.
seen enough.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had a buyer. I had a practice all lined up. It was
Really?
done with a broker, which, that's another topic we can get into if you want. I don't have a lot of love for those dudes, if I'm being if I'm being completely honest with you, because
I'm with you.
I've been burned by them more times than I've been helped. But nonetheless, I didn't know any better. I'm right out of school, and so I get hooked up with a broker. They've got a practice for me to buy. I'm ready to go. I buy a house that's 2 miles from the practice, and I'm locked in. And seemingly the day of signing, the guy backs out, decides he doesn't want to retire, doesn't want to sell.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I
You
then
got all
was
your stuff packed in a U-Haul. You're ready to move in. That's what
I was
happened.
there. I was already there.
Oh,
Yeah, I was there in a house, ready to roll. So, that broker was able to find me an associateship, same broker where the deal fell apart. They found me an associateship in town. So I started working there. I worked there for 3 years. They were great. It was a father and son. The son was roughly my age. So he and I were, I think he'd graduated the year before me. So
okay.
we were the same age. We both worked in the practice together, and his dad had another practice in town. So he'd work there a couple of days, work with us a couple of days. Great clinicians, great people. Probably the best, some of the best people I've met as far as, good dentists,
Wonderful.
good people. But the time came to kind of trigger your buy-in. You've reached your production goal, you can buy into the practice.
So when you started,
Mhm.
don't leave that little nugget hanging like that.
Okay, sure.
So when you started, you had an employment contract and you had some triggers for buying, because you said absolutely you wanted to buy a practice.
Correct.
So that was part of your deal with this then, right?
It was. So it was once you hit, once you produced 2 million, then you could buy you could buy into the practice.
Okay.
So I had done, it took me, I think, 3 years, somewhere in that neighborhood to get to that number. But when the time came, they offered me the ability to buy in, but I don't think they really wanted me to. And when I say that, I mean the dad had another son in dental school and had another son that was going to go to dental school. So it felt to me like they kind of wanted to do this as a family business, and I wasn't family. Aside from that, when it really came down to it, they didn't have a lot of profit in the practice. So the idea of me going into more debt to basically make less money, I would have made more money as an associate because I wouldn't have had a practice payment. I wouldn't have had the debt load. And so, when I kind of brought that up to them, they're like, yeah, that's kind of the situation here. And I said,
So how
well,
much debt did you graduate dental school with?
I finished dental school with roughly 280.
Was your wife working at the time?
She was not. No,
Okay.
she worked our first year before we started having kids, and then she stopped.
So when you graduated dental school, do you have 2 kids by that time?
I did. Hmm.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
actually
because
had
I'm
two, and
trying to
my
do the
third
math.
was born 6 months after we graduated.
So you're a young pup in practice,
Correct.
3
With 3 kids.
kids, 280 nut hanging over your head. Okay. What did it look like in that first practice in terms of financial? How did that work out for you?
It worked out fine. I felt like I was making money. I didn't feel like I was loaded by any stretch, but I was making money. I was making payments, and, we lived comfortably. We lived fine.
Okay.
So I was good with it. Like I said, when the rubber meets the road and it's okay, now go in, go get a loan for 500,000 to buy into this practice,
Yeah.
then you've got a debt payment,
Mhm.
and, there's no profit at the end of every month. That didn't seem very enticing to me. Um,
Well, that's you. If you're buying a business, right? Business has to earn profit. I
you would
mean,
think
take the
that's the
dentistry
idea.
part out, you know?
Yeah.
Like
So
I got offered to, a friend of mine wanted me to buy this bagel shop down the street, and I was checking. I was like, well, showed me the numbers, and I said, okay, because I'm thinking about, okay, maybe if I did this, a friend of mine kind of got forced out of it, his, into early retirement. I said, this would be a position, maybe we could, this would be a career for him, and I could help him get going, right? And when it all was said and done, the profit was like $20,000 for the year. And I said, what kind of hours are you working? Oh, I work 7 days a week, 10 hours a day.
ooh,
So I was like, so I would go to this gentleman and say, listen, you're going to work
yeah,
70 hours a week and you're going to bring home $20,000.
yeah.
Like,
Doesn't
what are
sound
you
that
buying?
appealing.
What are you buying? Are you
Yeah,
nuts?
yeah. That's
Oh
before
my
you
God.
pay that's before you pay off the debt.
Yeah. So what do you do next now? So you're 3 years in, right?
I am. So I'm 3 years in. So I, was on the lookout for another job.
Okay.
I found a practice that he was looking for a partner.
This
Uh,
Phoenix area?
Correct. Still in the Phoenix
Okay.
area.
Makes sense because you're there.
Yeah, I'm there.
Kids are there. You're probably
And in
almost
my and
getting
in my
ready to
head, I
school.
thought, okay, the last 3 years have gone well, but there's no red flags yet. It just wasn't the right practice for me. So I, found a practice that said he wanted a partner. He wanted somebody to buy into his practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I started working there. We had come up with an arrangement. And I was going to be working 3 days a week, and he was going to be working 3 days a week. So we would overlap a day and each
Sure. Yeah.
2 days by ourselves. So in my head, I thought, I'm only working 3 days a week. I've got 2 other days here with nothing to do. And so I decided naively to open up a scratch practice. I said, I'll open up a scratch. I'll work it 1 day a week, build it up, turn around and sell it. And then I'll, and the agreement that I had with this gentleman was, we would take a salary, it would cover all of my bills. And so anything that I did on the side would have been gravy, right? So I go through all the steps here to open up this scratch practice while I'm going through all the steps to buy into this guy's practice. Seemingly the day I signed the papers on the scratch practice, the
No.
guy comes to me and says,
No.
can't do it. Not going to
No.
work for me.
No.
Can't let anybody buy
I knew
in
you
right
were
now.
going there.
Oh,
I knew
yeah.
you were going
Yep.
there.
And it was, I've got this and that and the other going on. And so I was basically left with a scratch practice with no patients, no income, just I had equipped 2 chairs. And to be honest, I felt like I had done it as economically, like I thought I was being very financially savvy. Like,
Sure.
I'm doing this as cheap as possible. I'm not building the Taj Mahal here. I'm going to build this out small. I can grow it over time. I mean, I really thought I was being smart about this. And yeah, that's kind of where I found myself. I had no patients, I had an empty practice, and I had no income.
So
And
did you work with this other person before you bought in, or did you just start?
I did. I was working there as an associate while we were working through the details of the buy-in. And
Okay, so you had a little income coming from that,
I had
right?
a little bit. But then yeah, once he decided he didn't want a partner, that's where my employment ended there. I didn't stay employed there.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure, go ahead.
Now, looking back, did that doctor end up doing this? Did he sell? What happened? What transpired with that person in the future?
I don't believe at least to my knowledge, I don't believe he took on a partner. I think he continued to work it by himself. I think I know he had a side business that was keeping his dad employed. It was like a concrete business. And the story that I was told was that business was struggling and he was using his practice as collateral to keep it afloat. And in doing so, nobody could buy in. Now,
Okay.
it might have been he just didn't like me.
You know what?
He didn't think that was going to work. And that's
Thank God you didn't have a partnership then.
That's fair.
Because you'd have sunk with that. You'd have had Uncle Vito's cement shoes, man.
Yeah, it's yeah, true story. Yes. Could have gotten ugly. Could have gotten real ugly.
All right. So
Not
do
just
you
financially
sink
ugly.
all your time and effort into your scratch startup now, or what? Or you go
Well,
with
yeah,
some other work?
so I'm left with a scratch with, again, and I'm talking like no patience. Like
Yeah.
I just gotten started.
Yeah, you're
No
not even marketing.
Yeah, no money, no income. And at that point, I shook every tree. I looked everywhere for another job and couldn't find anything. And I mean, I finally told my wife, I said, this is it. I said, we're done here. I said, we're going to have to give this back to the bank. I declared bankruptcy and got out of town.
Oh my, declared
Yeah.
bankruptcy. That's a big deal.
It was a big deal. It
And
was a
how
bigger
many kids
deal
are in
than I
school
thought
at
it
this
was.
point? You got 1 or 2 kids in school at this point.
Let's see. My oldest was no, I would have had 2 in school. And we had our.
So this is a big family decision.
It was. And we had our 4th because we decided to go to Texas. So I had a good friend of mine from dental school that I'm still good friends with to this day. He went to Texas right out of school, went to the Dallas area. And back then I hadn't practiced for 5 years yet. So I didn't have reciprocity to be able to go wherever I wanted. So I was regulated to the Western. I took the Western Regional because I knew I was going back to Arizona.
Yeah, the Rebs. Yeah, yeah.
And so, looking at it, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to the coast. I got no interest in California, Oregon, or Washington. I'm not doing Utah. I know that that's a disaster. No interest in Vegas. I've already done Phoenix. No interest in New Mexico. And so it was down to Oklahoma and Texas, which somehow are in the Western region still. And so I'd called my buddy and said, kind of got the lay of the land. He really liked it there. And I said, all right, this is what we'll do. And I had another friend who was working for a DSO outfit out of Oklahoma City, called My Dentist. I don't believe they're around anymore, but that's what they were called at the time. And so I got in contact with them and they agreed to hire me. So we closed up shop and drove out of town.
So you went to work in Oklahoma City?
So the agreement that I had with them is that all of their offices were in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is about 2.5 hours straight north of Dallas. And they were going to open 3 offices in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I was going to work in one of those. I was going to open up one of their offices because I had some experience. I wasn't coming right out of school, as most of their dentists were, new kids coming out of Oklahoma, basically. And so the agreement is that I would open up that office in Dallas, but it wasn't ready yet. And so when we moved to Texas, we moved there in May, and I would leave on Sunday night and I would drive 2.5 hours up to Oklahoma City. I would work through the week till Thursday when I was done with work, and I'd drive back home. I'd be home Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and on Sunday night, I'd turn around and drive back and do it for 4 days and then come back.
Where did you stay up there?
They got a hotel for me right by the office I was working in.
Okay.
So it was, come up and work in this office. You'll get a lay of the land, kind of how we operate. And then
right. It's almost like you're going away for training school.
Correct. Yeah. So
And
I did that all summer. And I mean,
Okay.
mind you, we moved there knowing I knew my one buddy and his family, and those are the only people we knew there. And at the time,
So you got no help with the kids. Think about it, right?
and my youngest daughter, so she was born in February and we moved in May. So she was 3 months old. And so my wife would hold down the fort with our 4 young kids while I was gone all week working.
Going out of network can be really scary, but staying in network can be even scarier and riskier too, long term. Insurance reimbursements aren't even keeping pace with inflation, which can really affect the quality of your work, not to mention the quality of your life. I'm Allison Bernstein.
I'm Dr. Josh Bernstein. We went out of network over 20 years ago, and we can show you what worked, what didn't, and how you can do it with minimal risk.
ThriveOutOfNetwork.com teaches you everything you need to know, including the most important part, which is getting your team on board. It teaches them how to communicate with patients and getting them comfortable with the entire process.
Go to ThriveOutOfNetwork.com and check it out today. That's ThriveOutOfNetwork.com.
So what did that look like? What did that work look like?
I mean, it was steady work. It was very DSO, very high volume. If I'm being honest, the one major takeaway I got from that experience was that I learned how to take out teeth. I mean, I felt like that's all I did. A lot of extractions, tons of extractions. And I wasn't super comfortable with them coming out of school and didn't do a ton in my first, I spent a summer and that's pretty much all I did. And so I became pretty proficient at it. But, you know, I mean, I hated being away from my family. I mean,
Right.
it was awful. But to me, it was a means to an end. You know, you do this for a little bit, and then come August, you know, we'll be, you know, I'll be back down in their office there, and we'll make it happen. The funny part about it is that they told me where the location of the new office was going to be in town where we were living. And so we moved there and made some friends, and I joined in a male softball league that we'd play on Friday nights. And so every Friday night, I would drive past where this location was on my way to the softball fields. And it was a bank. It was in a band, you know, it was a vacant bank. And week after week, I drove by, and week after week, nothing changed. No construction crews, nobody looking at it, nothing doing with it.
They were stringing you along.
Of course. So we get to August, and I go to them, I said, listen, guys, I said, I can't keep driving up here. My kids are going to start school. I've been away from my family all summer. I said, and I know you haven't even purchased the building, or if you have, you haven't touched it, because I drive past it every week and nothing's going on there. Well, yeah, we ran into some snags and, you know, this and that and the other. And I said, well, this doesn't work for me. I said, I can't keep doing this. And so I found myself unemployed yet again. And, you know, and again, in a city where, you know, didn't know much of anybody.
Okay.
So I found a job, you know, I found an associateship working in a practice. And I'm going to tell you a story. When I was 16, right, I couldn't wait to get a job, because in my house, if I wanted to drive, I had to put gas in the car. Nobody was gassing up.
Yeah. At 16, you drive.
Yeah. When I was 16, I went out and got a job, and I got the first job I could find, which was at an Arby's in the food court at the mall by my house.
There you go.
I worked there for 2 weeks and got fired twice. And that was a better job than the associateship that I had when I worked in the Fort Worth area for a year. It was an awful, awful job. I mean, it was a DMO clinic. It was bare bones. And the guy who owned it, he never practiced there, so I was there by myself. But he was notorious for cutting corners. And when I say that, I mean, he refused to buy impression material. He would only use Blue Bite. So all of my Crown and Bridge impressions had to be taken with Blue Bite. And he had a cut rate deal with the lab that he worked with, that they agreed to do his crowns for super cheap, but they were the last ones that they would do. So they would do everybody else's work, and then they would get to his. So people were in temporaries forever. Nothing ever fit because the material was terrible. And if the lab had any questions, they would ship it back, and I would have to trim the dies and try to find the margins. It was awful. And the icing on the cake was the only radio station that we were allowed to listen to was Watercolors, that smooth jazz, every day, all day.
The true definition of elevator music.
It was a long year, you know. I mean, and I mean, again, I was out beating the bushes. I was out looking for practices to buy. I was out looking for a better job. And it was fairly obvious that the writing was on the wall. Like, I saw it way quicker in Dallas than I did in Phoenix, that there's not a lot here. There's a ton of dentists here, but there's no good jobs here. You know,
now, did they pay you well, and did they pay you consistently or on time?
I mean, I was paid based on what I could collect, but, you know, in a DMO clinic where basically they're getting a capitation check for every patient that's on the roster, and the patients don't pay for anything, it was impossible to produce anything.
How do you even figure that out? How do you even calculate that out? Like capitation plans, which, if people don't understand, capitation plans are, you are paid per patient per month.
Yes.
Whether they show up or not.
See them or not. Correct. And you're paid a flat fee. And when I say you, I mean the owner. I'm not paid the flat fee. Right. I don't know the joint. So he's getting a check every month for X amount of dollars for having so many people on the roster that I'm the one that has to deal with.
But you got to be paid at least a salary then, right? Or something.
Oh, no. I was paid based on what I could produce. I paid 30% of what.
How do they even calculate that?
Yeah. Well, because they would have some, I mean, it wasn't their entire office was the capitation. It was most of it. I mean, they had some PPO insurance. They had some, you know, they had some cash paying patients with something coming in. But
you did this for a year?
I did it from August until the next, I think, June. Yeah. So I did it for almost a year.
Wow. So
And it's fun,
you're getting abused, is what you're saying.
for sure. And it's funny, my wife and I look back and I mean, even to this day, she says, I don't know how we lived that way. Like, I don't even know how you paid for everything. I mean,
But
we didn't live an extravagant lifestyle by any stretch, but I mean, we always had what we needed. But I definitely wasn't getting ahead. That's for sure.
so let me ask you a question for other people who think, young people that might be listening to this or new dentists that are listening to this that have had, their situation. What was it like mentally in this scenario? Did you start to doubt who you were, what you were doing? Fill me in.
I didn't doubt dentistry, right? Because I had seen, again, my first experience out of school was a good experience, a good
So that
associate.
that really helped put some
It
foundation
did, because I was like, okay, I know that I can do this. I know I can do the work, and I know, I know that this can work. I just haven't found the right situation for it to work for me. And that's kind of where I was at. I was still, so at this point,
Okay, so you weren't ready to just
5 years out,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, okay, I've just gotten a kind of a raw deal. I've gotten screwed a couple of times, in my opinion. And, I take responsibility in some of this. I made some mistakes I probably shouldn't have made. I mean, I paid no attention to the level of competition in Phoenix. I mean, you ever been to Phoenix? I mean, it's set up on a grid, and you can't not throw a stone at 5 dentists on every corner. As you hit each mile, you hit each light. There's
Yep.
dentists on every corner, multiples.
Yep.
And I paid zero attention to that. And that's on me. That's me being stupid and naive and not knowing what should have been looking for. And that's why when I got to Texas and started to see the same thing, I thought, okay, I've seen this before. I know how this story ends.
Okay.
And so, it's time to figure something else out.
By curiosity, the first
Sure.
practice you went into, we didn't touch on this. What was the business environment? Were they in network? Were they PPO?
They were in network PPO, no Medicaid, no
Okay.
managed care. The dad was a big full mouth reconstruction guy.
Okay.
He was a CE junkie, and to this day, he's probably the best clinician I've ever met and probably will ever meet. He knew his stuff and he was very good at it. But the part that he wasn't good at is these cases would take him, I mean, they would take him so long. And I'm talking time-wise, that by the time somebody paid 50 grand, 60 grand, 70 grand for their case, it took so long that there was no profit left. It wasn't efficient that way. And to his credit, he was a perfectionist and he was doing it the right way. It's just there's no money in that if they're taking that long. And I'm talking putting people in Invisalign to line things up. I'm talking leveling out the gingiva. I'm talking every single detail. That's what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so while he was a fantastic clinician, business-wise, it didn't make a lot of sense. It lost money over time.
But he had to be getting paid a straight fee. He had to be getting fees on those because that's outside of his network.
He was getting, yeah, I mean, he was getting people. And the funny thing was that he would always complain because they would pay up front. So they'd come with, 50 grand. Well, by the time the case is done, that 50 grand is long gone. I mean, it was gone 2 months after he started, and he's still a year into this case trying to get it finished.
Right.
And so, those returns diminished so quickly that it just, business-wise,
Wow.
it didn't make a lot of sense.
Okay. So yeah. So you've seen good. So now you're at 5 years. So can you get licensed anywhere now?
I could. I was still fairly closed off to leaving the West. That's what I knew, and that's where I was from. So I started to cast a net. I went and I remember looking at a practice in Montana,
Mm-hmm.
up in Billings, Montana. There was a guy looking for an associate with a chance to buy in. I flew up there to take a look at it. And, after talking to him for a little bit, figured out that there were a grip load of dentists in Billings. And I thought, well, this isn't going to work either. So I flew back home, went back to Texas. And at that time, I had a real good friend of mine from dental school who had graduated a year ahead of me, who was working for an outfit in Colorado called Comfort Dental. I don't know if you're familiar.
I've heard of them. Yep.
So out of the blue, he calls me one night. He said, hey, he goes, I know you've been struggling out there. He said, you should really check this out. He goes, I think this would work really well for you.
Okay.
Said, listen, I said, I'll do almost anything because what I'm doing right now isn't working. So I drove from Texas to Colorado and kind of went to one of their potential partner meetings. So if you're not familiar with how Comfort Dental works, it's DSO-ish from the standpoint of that there's a corporate office, but every dentist that works for Comfort Dental owns the practice that they work in.
Okay.
You go in as a partner, and whoever else is there, is your partner there. You buy into the practice. You own that, it's basically a franchise. You
Sure.
own that dental franchise, if you will, in that city or in that town.
That Arby's.
That's right. You own that Arby's, that Subway. You pay a royalty back, a percentage back to the corporate office every month.
Yeah, for advertising.
Correct. Yeah, for marketing and all of that.
For payroll, for all that stuff. Yeah.
And they had their own lab, and you had to use the lab. That was non-negotiable. And they were flat out, and they said, listen, the lab is our biggest money maker, and it's not close. I think at the time when I was working with them, I think they had 300 offices between Colorado and, some other outlying, New Mexico, Arizona, some other outlying states. They had a few kind of out in the Midwest. And so I had gone, they have a potential partner meeting where you go and see, they give you the spiel of, this is what Comfort Dental is. This is how it works. Here's a list of everybody that's looking for a partner. You go find one and you're off and running. So I spent 2 days driving from Fort Collins all the way down to Pueblo and back, looking at every opportunity in Colorado that, had availability or said they had availability. More times than not, when I would show up at these offices, they'd say, we don't want another partner. Like, we're good where we're at. But I did find.
So the primary appeal here is not really a job, it's a partnership. Is that fair to say?
It is. Yeah. So you're not an associate. So
No, but I'm saying from your frame of mind, what
Yes.
you're looking for now, you're looking for, I want a piece of the pie right off the bat.
Correct. Yes. I've been looking to own something since day one, and the only thing I owned went belly up the day I got it. It was grand opening, grand closing. So, I would always been because I never ever thought that I would get to where I wanted to get to financially by being an associate. I never thought that was possible. And I still actually don't, to be perfectly honest. I know there's, you get on Facebook and you hear these groups. So I'm making $350 as an associate. Good for you. That was never in the cards for me. I never saw that. Or saw that potential anyway. But that being said, so yeah, it was an opportunity and this is twofold. For me, I have a bankruptcy that's a year old. So I know that nobody's giving me financing to buy anything, and not for a long time. And so from my standpoint, it was, I can own something here. And in their spiel, they say, we have never turned a partner away due to finances or due to bankruptcy. And I said, well, I'm going to put you to the test and find out. And, sure enough, they did. Because they all finance each other. And when I say that, I mean, if you and I are partners in an office and we want to bring in a third partner, then that partner goes and gets a down payment loan from the bank, a bank that Comfort Dental has done business with forever. So it's a guarantee that they're going to get the loan that they need. And the remainder of that balance, that partner pays to you and I every month until they're paid off at a 10% interest rate. So nobody's turned away because they can't get financing, because they all finance each other, right? And so in my head, I thought, this is perfect for me. I get a chance to own something. I can make more money, and they're not going to turn me away because I have a financial checkered past, if you will. And so, I went to that meeting and I found an opportunity up in Fort Collins where I would be one of the first two partners in the office. So I wasn't coming in on the back end where there were 2 or 3 guys already there.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I can start fresh here and make a run at this. So I did.
And
it treated me well, if I'm being honest. I worked for them for 7 years. I was a partner there in Fort Collins.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic.
And that was easily the best I had done financially up to that point, for sure.
But there's a little more stability now. You've got 7 years under your belt, right?
Correct. Yes.
What did the practice look like?
I had 5 years before when I got there. I'd been out of school for 5 years, and then I practiced another 7 years with them.
Right.
Um, it was good financially. The issues that I shouldn't say issues, but there's give and take with everything. Don't get me wrong. But Comfort Dental is open 7:30 to 7:30 Monday through Friday and 7:30 to 1:30 on Saturdays. That's their other non-negotiable. You are open all of those hours.
Mhm.
Again, if you and I are partners and you take a vacation for a week, guess who's working 66 hours that week? This guy. Because those doors are open. That's how they market it. That's how they portray themselves. And so, so there were, I mean, on a weekly basis, I would work 12-hour shifts, which was exhausting. On a weekly every other week, I was working on a Saturday, which I did not care for, if I'm being honest. And, in my head, I thought, is this really kind of what I got in this to do? To work nights, to work weekends? Like that wasn't what I signed up for in my head anyway.
So you're not allowed to bring in any associates then, correct? The only people that work there are part owners.
When I was there.
That's true.
They now, I believe, started allowing guys to bring in associates with the potential to become partners. But at the time that I was there, no. It was, you were in bed with these people. I mean, if you bought into that office, then that dude that you're working with, he's your partner, whether he's a disaster or not.
Did you bring in another partner, or did you stay just the two of you?
We did bring in a third. So when I was there, we brought in a third partner after I'd been there for 2 years together.
Okay, so your lifestyle had to get a little better.
It did. So when that happened, we would work on average 30 hours a week between the three of us, bring all of the hours.
So your kids are now settled, they're in school, right?
They are.
You're in the Fort Collins community, right? What did that practice look like?
It was very heavy Medicaid. I would say
heavy Medicaid?
We were probably 70% Medicaid.
70% Medicaid in Colorado.
Correct. While I was there, they had changed the adult Medicaid to give them $1,000 a year. So before, when I started there, it was on adults, they would basically cover extractions and that was it.
Yeah, extractions, dentures, yeah.
Yeah, not even dentures, just extractions, nothing else. No replacements, nothing, just taking teeth out on adults. While I was there, the laws changed to where they would allow an adult $1,000 benefit that could be used towards fillings, crowns. You had to get them pre-authorized. Dentures, you had to get them pre-authorized. Quad scaling, what have you. That was another part of Comfort Dental. We did not have hygienists. We were the hygienists because their entire philosophy is lean and mean, meaning keep your overhead as low as possible. You take home more money, which is true.
Well, if you're a Medicaid.
Correct. Yeah. And so, ideally, if you're not paying a hygienist $30 an hour, you do it. And then you're not paying somebody $30 an hour to do that. So that when that benefit changed to where adults could get some coverage, we got a lot busier. And that's where we probably got to about 70% Medicaid because we were open. We were probably the only ones that took it, where we were at, other than the other Comfort Dentals in town. I mean, nobody else was taking it. And
what kind of revenue was your office bringing in?
On average, our average month, we would do about 150 between the three of us.
Okay.
That neighborhood.
Right.
And like I said, you're taking home, I mean, if on average each of us are doing, $50,000 and you're taking home roughly half of it, if your overhead's right around 50%, which ours was, you're making about $25,000 a month before taxes and before you're paying that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, it's more money than I had made in all of the years combined.
All right. So you're not really learning a lot of business skills.
Yes
right?
and no. I mean, you're running some of it because you're hiring and firing, right? So you're responsible for the staff. So from that standpoint, yes. But, I mean, they took care of marketing. So you didn't touch that. I mean, you just paid a flat marketing fee every month and they took care of the marketing. In fact, they don't do this anymore, but back at Coors Field, they used to have a big Comfort Dental banner. I don't know if you're a baseball guy. I am. But out in right center field, there was a big green Comfort Dental banner that was out there every season. And then at the 7th inning stretch, they would do the tooth race, where these guys run around the field and they had a toothbrush and a floss. And these guys would run around the field and it was the Comfort Dental, dental race every 7th inning.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew how to spend that money. I know my kids always loved it. I mean, we'd go to the games and they'd love seeing that crap. So
Got milk.
that's right. So that's part of our marketing money at work.
Okay.
So
So
so you did learn some. Like I said, you did have to deal with staff. You did have to deal with hiring and firing. You did have to do. I mean, we did the payroll ourselves. But like I
you
said, the marketing
analyze your numbers. Did you look at things and
we
make
did.
business decisions, or you pretty much got to go corporate?
Well, like you weren't changing labs. You know what I mean? Like you weren't trying to. You
Understand
weren't
that.
messing the lab
Well,
bill. You
with
weren't really using any other supplier besides Shine because they had a deal with Comfort Dental, so our supplies were cheaper, so there was no reason to use anybody else. So, truth be told, a lot of your decisions were made for you, because if you did anything else, it would just cost you more money, and they would frown upon it. They didn't really want you to do that, which is
okay.
understandable. They had negotiated deals with these companies, so that's who we used.
Okay. So 7 years are up. What makes you decide this is it?
So,
What's the epiphany? What happens?
well, so
Because
this
now
one,
you're at what, 2018, 2019 timeframe?
2018 is when I sold my partnership there.
So someone had to come in and buy your part out.
Correct. So you can't, yeah, you can't turn around and say, well, I'll just sell to my partner. I guess you could, but they wouldn't buy it. I mean, they would, again, go twice as much in debt and have to work twice as much. So you would have to then, yeah, turn around and sell your partnership to somebody who wanted to come in and be a partner at Comfort Dental. My wife developed dry eye disease. I don't know if you've ever been out to Colorado, but it's very dry. And it was causing a lot of problems with her vision where she was going blurry and she'd been seeing a cornea specialist, and his recommendation was, this is a harsh climate for what you've got here. And if I were you, it would be a lot easier on you if you lived somewhere with some humidity.
Okay. So
She came to me and
there's a
said,
legitimate
it is. And
health concern, reason
she
to
came
now
to
make a
me,
major lifestyle change.
she came to me and said, I really don't want to deal with this anymore. And I said, okay. I said, I'm good with moving. I said, but if we're going to move, we're going to go small. I said, I'm done. I would not have chosen to practice anywhere in Colorado had it not been with Comfort Dental, because I knew what their model was. I knew that they had kind of a built-in niche of, when they were open and had a marketing machine, and that they had been up and running there for a good period of time. And so, I would never have chosen to go there and buy a private practice, because it was dentist on top of dentist there too. It was the same thing. So that being said, it was okay. Now it's time to, we need to go find somewhere humid. I said, then we're going to go small. And I said, I'm not dealing with this level of competition anymore.
So
And
small, when you say small, you're not necessarily meaning a small office. You're talking about
I'm talking a
smaller
small town.
population, right?
Correct. I'm talking a
Small
small
town.
town. Yes, I'm
I
talking.
love small towns, man. So anyway,
Yeah, it's been very good to me. I'll just put it that
so
way.
what did you do? How'd you go about finding it? Did you do
Well,
the same thing? Start knocking on doors?
we originally wanted to go to North Carolina.
Okay.
It was humid enough. I'm a beach guy. I would have loved to get closer to the beach. And in my mindset, I thought I can find a smaller town in and around Raleigh. That's kind of the city that we like more than Charlotte. So I could find something commutable where I could get out to a smaller community, work in a smaller community, have less competition, but my family can still enjoy the benefits of, the big city, if you will, the amenities. So my kids were still in school. I had sold my
Yeah.
partnership in October of 2018. And so our house was up for sale. So I flew out to Raleigh and I got a job working at a DSO.
So when you
I-
sold the practice, you got a
Uh-huh.
check or you got
I did.
Wow.
Well, no, I take that back. No, so I got a down payment check.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a down payment check. So I didn't get, I didn't cash out. And then she was paying me monthly, just like I was paying my partners
Right.
monthly, them money.
And that went okay? That
did.
arrangement? Okay.
It did. Yeah.
All right. Okay, back to Raleigh. All right.
So that being said, so I fly out to Raleigh and I get a job at a DSO. A true DSO. This guy probably had 30 practices in and around Raleigh, one guy, which was fairly shocking looking back on it now. And got a job working in a couple of his offices, and then I would spend my weekends hitting the pavement looking for a practice.
Okay.
I
Something to buy.
Yep. And I was out there for probably 8 months. by myself. So I got out there and started working in October. And I mean, well, maybe 6 or 7 months. And I mean, I drove that entire state. I went to the western part of the state, southern part of the state. I was all over. Look, and I finally got to a point where I had one more practice to look at. And at this point, the owner of the DSO, this is 6 months down the road. And I told him up front, I said, listen, I'm coming here looking for a practice. I just need a job right now. And he said, okay, he goes, I'll pay you a salary, come and work and, while you're looking for a job or looking for a practice. And so I'd been doing this for 6 months. And he finally came to me and he said, we need to figure something out. I said, that's fair. I said, you've been good to me. I know it's taken me longer than I thought it would. And so I kind of agreed to quit, like my time was up in April and I had one more practice I was going to go look at. And it was out in Greenville, North Carolina, where Eastern Carolina University is.
Yep.
And I went out there and looked at it, and the gentleman who owned it had passed away. And so the son was looking to sell the practice. It was, oh gosh, the numbers are going to escape me right now, but he was looking for, I think, 1.5 million for the practice. And so I went out and took a look at it, and it was on the side of a road. It looked like a mobile home. And I mean, this guy he lived, if you stood out the back door and looked out the back door of the practice, you could see his house. I mean, he would walk out of his house, walk across the field, walk into his practice, work all day, turn around and walk home. And this guy loved doing dentistry because he churned out so much dentistry. But it was one of these operations where pay me when you pay me. I mean, no financial arrangements, no nothing. It was somebody came in and needed something, he would do it. So they wanted $1.5 million for the practice, and they had $750,000 of outstanding AR that was uncollected.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I mean that blew my mind. And
well, what was his monthly production? 150, same thing.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah, if not
so
more
it's
than
5x his monthly production is.
I mean, he was. Yeah. I mean, single dude, just a guy by himself. I mean, he died working there. I mean, he just worked himself to death. And I literally had moved out. I had subletted an apartment while I was there looking for a practice. I had everything in my truck that I had. And I drove to this practice and I thought, there's no way. $1.5 million plus another 750 in uncollectible money. I said, no. And I called my wife and I said, all right, I'm coming home. And I got in the car in my truck and I drove back to Colorado and I drove home.
So your wife didn't come to Raleigh with
no, because my kids were still in school and we hadn't sold our house yet. So they stayed in Colorado and I was out in North Carolina by myself.
Okay.
So now this is now April of 2019 and I'm unemployed again. And we're talking, again, I graduated in 2007. So we're talking
1 year from now, you got a pandemic coming into this.
That's right. Yeah. Little did I know. And so I told her, I said, North Carolina's not working. I said, I've shaken every tree. I said, so I expanded my search to Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. I considered Florida until I figured out you had to take another board exam. I wasn't having any part of that, which they have now just lifted. So congratulations.
Yeah, right.
So I started kind of looking at everything in that area, and I had come across a broker who had a practice listed in Ashland, Kentucky, which is, I'm in the corner of Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia, right in that corner.
Yep.
And I came and looked at it, and it was.
How far are you from Marietta, Ohio?
I think 3 hours.
Okay. All right.
I'm 2 hours straight south of Columbus.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Marietta's up on the river there. I think it's maybe 2.5 to 3 hours away. It was like I said, I came across this. It was it was a place I'd never heard of, and I thought, okay, that's a good start because I don't want anywhere that I've ever heard of because I've already tried a bunch of places I'd heard of, and none of that was working. And so I came and met these guys. It was twin brothers. They were both in their late 60s. They had been practicing. They were from here. One went to UK, one went to Louisville for dental school, and they both came back and had practiced here for 40 years.
Surprised they talk to each other. Kentucky and Louisville is a major rivalry.
They didn't talk to each other much, I came to find out, but that's a different story.
They didn't talk during basketball season. I could
No, they
promise
did
you
not. No, absolutely not. And so I came and looked at their practice. I mean, it was old. And it looked like it had been worked in for 40 years. It was it was in a medical building that was next to a hospital in town.
Okay.
So I came, met them, kind of drove around and looked and kind of did a little bit of homework and quickly realized that at the time I was 41 years old. And I was going to be, if I bought this practice, I would be the youngest dentist in town by at least 15 years. And I remember
How many
looking
dentists were in town? Ballpark.
That's a good question. Here in town right now, I mean, we probably have, of consequence, 6 or 7.
And how many did you have back then? Probably 12.
About the same.
Oh, really?
No, we haven't lost many yet.
Okay. All right.
But I don't know, just driving around, and I met these guys and I looked and I remember calling my wife and I said, hey, can I interest you in any Eastern Kentucky perhaps? And she said, I don't care where it is. She's like, I'm just done doing this. I'm done being by myself. I'm done with you being gone all the time. Like, if that's where you want to go, then let's go.
Right. Plus, she still got the dry eye situation because she's still
Correct. Yeah. So she knows we need to get out. And so I said, okay, let's do it. And so I drove, like I said, I drove home. I had seen it before. I drove home, helped that, we'd sold our house by that point. I helped them pack up the house. And I drove back here and started working in May. I bought the practice and started working in May of 19. And then went back out and got them. I mean, the first time that my family set foot here was when we moved here. I mean, they pulled up to a house that I bought that they had never seen. And it was a wild scene. It was a total disaster. I mean, the house was.
Did you sell your house in Colorado at this point? Were they living in a apartment?
Yeah, they've been living in it the whole time up until we were able to sell it.
Okay.
But it took us a better part of a year to sell it.
Bet you could sell it tomorrow now, the way things are going.
For a lot more than what I sold it for.
Yeah, I mean, right. What about, I don't want to even whine about it anymore, but I was talking to my wife tonight about it. It was pretty funny. So they come, you got a house, they move in. Okay.
And then it's go time.
What did the practice look like? Do you mind talking about like any numbers or what you want to, whatever you're comfortable with?
So it had 6 operatories, really 5 of them functional. One of them was not an operatory. So it's 5 operatories. Like I said, it was 2. These 2 guys were practicing together, so I condensed it down to just me. They had 2 full-time hygienists, and they each had 2 assistants. So I kind of pared the staff down to where, it was just going to be me. So I didn't need 4 assistants for just me. I kept the 2 hygienists, kept the front desk. And I bought that practice for $700,000. They had been doing right around $1 million. Which, that was the other thing.
A lot of money in small town America.
It is. It was one of the better practices in town. And every time going back to North Carolina, every practice that I looked at, they were getting 100% of what they were producing. And there was always somebody there with deeper pockets than me. The DSO thing got real busy there, seemingly the same time I was there. Every practice that I looked at with a broker, the broker had somebody else on the line that they knew had cash and was ready to buy because they were buying up practices like crazy.
Sounds like the real estate market right now.
Exactly. And that's kind of how I knew, like, this is too hot. This is too hot of a spot. Right. I'm not going to be able to get, financing for even 80% of this, let alone 100% when somebody else is going to pay cash for it.
So was there much negotiation or pretty much asking price to spot it?
No, because I shouldn't say I wasn't in the mood, but I wasn't in a place to negotiate. And truth be told, I still had the bankruptcy hanging over my head and I knew I wasn't going to get financing. So I asked them to carry it. I said, and knowing that they wanted out, I said, listen, guys, I'm just going to tell you right now, I bought a house and I'm not going to be able to get financing for the practice too. So if you guys are willing to carry it, I'll buy it. And they did.
Okay. Now it was cold. They were out the day you went in.
That's right. Turnkey. They walked away and I walked in.
Okay. All right.
So that was June of 19. And things were good until they weren't.
You know, I'm thinking, right? You're barely half a year in. You
right,
barely met a hygiene cycle, and you're going to shut down.
right. Well, and on top of it, the other kicker is that the hospital that this practice was attached to closed.
Oh,
And
shit.
I had no idea that that was even a thing. I didn't know that.
You got to think there's a black cloud over your head at this
No,
point.
for
You
reals.
got to think it only rains where
Yeah.
you're standing.
Yeah. I mean, I thought a hospital close. I did not know that that happened. I didn't
That's
know that was a thing.
impossible.
Yeah, that and I remember because I got there in June. In February, they announced that the hospital was closing. Then COVID hit. We were out for 8 weeks. By the time I got back, the hospital was closed. Total ghost town. I mean, it was super busy up there when I was, when I first started, there was cars everywhere, people everywhere, tons of people coming in from the hospital, and then it all disappeared overnight. And I was like,
People
man,
got to think you're a jinx, man.
this is, yeah, it was wild. And so I was like, okay. So I just kept, I mean, to be honest, I'm still there. I've been trying to move out of that location for the better part of 3 years. And it has been very difficult for me to get to move that practice.
Well,
But
think about it, right? So how many people were employed at the hospital,
yeah.
and nurses and physicians, some decent paying jobs,
Oh yeah. Good
minimum.
insurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It all disappeared.
Wow.
But I'm in an environment where, again, I'm the youngest dentist in town and there's not a lot of competition. So even then, I mean, if this had happened anywhere else that I practiced, I probably would have gone under, truth be told. I mean, it would have dried up and there would have been nobody left. But they got to go somewhere, and there's only so many people in town that they can go and see.
And
And
what happened to the numbers in the practice? Did they follow
I mean,
suit?
they dipped a little bit, obviously, because we were closed for 8 weeks. But no, I mean, really didn't lose much at all. To be honest, I mean, I did a lot of stuff that they didn't do. I'm placing implants. I'm extracting teeth. I mean, they got to the point where they pretty much referred out everything that wasn't a filling or a crown and bridge.
Gotcha.
And so I kept a lot of stuff in house, and was able to expand the services a little bit with adding implants and implant dentures and things like that they weren't doing.
So you had to grow the practice. Huh? You had to grow the.
I did a little bit. I had some marketing. I did. That's another funny thing. I sent out a direct mail piece. Just one of those glossy cards that was just about me, and nobody here was doing that. Nobody. I was the only one. And I thought, I've never lived somewhere where where I did get 10 of those in my mailbox every day. Or, the old Val packs in the envelope where you'd pull those glossies out and you'd see 10 dentists and they're all offering the exact same offer in Phoenix. It's like nobody else is doing this here. So, I mean, I would send out mailers and the phones would ring off the hook. They would ring like crazy. And I got to the point where I had to stop marketing because I couldn't see everybody in a timely fashion. I was seeing more than I needed to see, or I've seen enough people. So yeah, I was able to grow and I was able to, to get it, roughly to where a little bit past where they were at by myself.
Now, what did that business look like? You said it was, we didn't really talk about that. PPOs, no
One
Medicaid.
PPO, just Delta Dental.
What's
one
that?
network. They were in network with one provider. That was it. Just Delta
So
Dental.
in network with one, out of
Yeah.
network with everybody else.
Correct. Yeah, they would bill
Well, you
for
got to have better cash flow then.
a little bit. Now, where it got interesting for me is in let me think here. We're in 2024. So in 2022, one of my front desk had a daughter who was a hygienist, and she was working in a practice that was in a town 30 minutes from my house, the only dental practice in that county. And she told her mom that her boss was closing the office. And then the mom tells me, and I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, the guy came to him and said that he just can't do it anymore and he wants to close the office.
Well, yeah. So those people have to go to other counties. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, get me his number. Let me talk to him. So I call him on the phone that day. I never met him before, never talked to him. And I said, I heard, through the grapevine that you're looking at closing your office. He said, yeah. I said, do you mind me asking why? Because he was 2 years older than me. So he wasn't of retirement age, and he had a bunch of excuses that, he had COVID issues and he had some health issues. And what it really came down to is that he didn't want to own a practice anymore. It's a ton of work, and he just
He's
didn't
how
want
old
to.
again?
He was a couple years older than me, so mid-40s,
Young guy.
young guy. And he
And he's
wanted
just
to,
retiring. He's just shutting, and he just,
no, he went to go work at the prison.
ooh,
So he wanted to work
okay.
for, yeah, he wanted the 9 to 5, federal benefits and
Sure.
just show up and work and leave. Fine. So I asked him, I said, would you consider selling it? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. I said, let me come and take a look. So I went and met him that next week, looked at the practice, really nice office, 6 operatories. When it was up and running, he was working it full time and it was doing close to $1 million a year. And so
Same business setup and with one plan?
no, he was in network with everybody.
Okay.
So I kind of made him an offer. I said, listen, I got to consider worst case scenario here. And the worst case scenario for me is that I can't find an associate to work this practice and I have to work both. And in doing that, this is going to turn into a part-time practice. I can only work it a couple of days and I'll work my other one 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And so I offered him
That's facts.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I said, I offered him 200 grand. I said, I can give you 200,000 for it. That's the best I can do. And he took it.
Well, it
And
was
so-
either that or close, right?
Correct. It was either that or get nothing.
So he's getting 200.
Yeah. So he gets 200 and I end up with a practice that can do $1 million if I can staff it, if I can get somebody there. And so I worked that way for 2 years where I was there 2 days a week and I was at my original practice 3 days a week. And then the next year in 2023, I came across another gentleman who was looking to sell. He was looking to retire. He was of retirement age. And same thing. He's in the next county over with no other dental offices in his county. And it's either close the doors and walk away or sell it to me for a quarter of what it can do. And I bought that one as well last year in 2023.
So wait a second. So you're working both practices.
So he agreed to stay on as an associate for a year.
So he
and
gives
work
you
back
a
for
year.
me, the retired guy. Yeah. So the guy, the third practice owner agreed to stay on as an associate for a year. So
And
that
that
was
practice was doing how much?
he was doing right around 800, between 800 and 900.
And that was what was that price?
275.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So you're working the one practice
I work
in
3 days.
almost ghost town, but you're doing 3 days there.
I'm working the second practice 2 days a week,
Okay. And you're
And-
not working the other practice at all then.
and I'm not in there at all. He stayed on as an associate and he wanted to cut back to 3 days a week. And so
Okay.
he was working 3 days a week in that practice.
Did you take over the management of it? Did this add a
Did.
lot of administrative work to you, at least, like your
Did.
home?
Yes,
Had
way
to.
more than I anticipated.
Yeah, it has to. I mean,
It
you
does,
bought
yeah,
it.
because it's payroll. it's, and it's all of it had to be upgraded. It had to be, I changed out the computer systems. They didn't have any, he didn't have any software. He had Easy Dental, excuse me. And I had already added Dentrix Ascend to my other 2 offices and didn't, I wasn't going to have a separate one that was different. So I added Dentrix Ascend to the third so that I
You
could
happy with the son?
great. I do like it. It works good for me.
Yeah, we have it, and not in love with it. I mean, there's so many different things. But anyway, it's a good cloud-based service.
It is. And that's what I liked about it. That made sense to me. I can access everything from wherever I'm at,
Yeah.
get into every office and do whatever it is I need to do.
Now, does your wife help you out doing any of the business or behind the scenes stuff?
A little bit when she can, but I've got 5 kids, that are
And
very
you have no
active.
family help in the area too.
Correct.
Let's tell
No,
the
it's
next
just
part of
us.
that, right?
Yeah.
Which was interesting. We talked about beforehand, like when you left Phoenix, right? You literally set sail and you're never
We've never-
really grounded again.
Yeah, we've never lived by family ever since.
Yeah.
We've always been by ourselves.
That's something that, I tell you what though, and you had probably as bad a story as anybody's ever had. I
It
mean,
feels that way. I don't like to feel sorry for myself, but it does feel that way.
you have never in what I'm listening to, you've never, made that like, oh, I feel sorry for me. You're like, and this happened and that happened. Those things happen.
Just
But
what
I
happened.
don't get this cloud of black, like the person who's like, well, we went there and then this closed and then we went there, and then this happened. Was like these things happen, and those are the coincidences, and you bounce and you figure it out.
Sure.
And not many people recover from bankruptcy, let alone are entrepreneurs to the point where they're owning 3 practices.
Right. Well,
So what's your
yeah.
plan now? You got to get an associate in pretty bad. Is that the
So, so this is another great story. So I had a young man that was coming out of school in January of this year, 2024. Now, obviously, we all know that January is not the normal graduation time for any of them. And so I was under, I knew that he was a semester behind, that he should have graduated in May. He's from this area, wanted to come back here and practice.
Oh,
So, when I met him, I asked him, I said, so, why a semester late? What happened? And listen, I had classmates who, failed a class or had to repeat a class. No big deal. It happens. He had, according to him, he had to take some time away for a family issue and, took a semester off. I don't really believe that's why he took a semester off. I think he had to repeat a class. That's my opinion. But nonetheless, he started in, let me think here. He had graduated in December. He took his sweet time getting his license and everything. And so he started working for me in March of this year, straight out of school. And so I still had in my third practice, I still had the retiring associate working full time. And so I was going to put him in my second practice full time, and I was going to go back to my original practice 4 days and work with him 1 day a week, kind of mentoring him and kind of making sure that
otherwise he's not getting he's on his own too much.
Correct. And then, hopefully find an associate when the retiree wanted to walk away. So about 3 weeks in, I had sent him an email, that staff had expressed some concerns.
Sure.
And so I had sent him an email and I said, hey, we're going to be working together tomorrow, which was a Friday. I said, so here's some stuff I want to talk about, kind of see where we're at here. So I sent him this email on a Thursday morning, and he replied back very defensively, and then proceeded to go up to the front desk and tell them that was his last day. That
I was just gonna guess that.
Based on what that he wasn't going to be treated like a child, that he was a professional. Mind you, he was 3 weeks into practice, and he had it all figured out. He knew exactly what he was doing. And so I had sent him a text and I said, did you just go up and tell the front desk that today's your last day? And he said, yep. I said, you can go ahead and leave now. We'll figure out the rest of the day. I mean, this was like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
And he left and disappeared. So now I had to go flip back to my original schedule and go back to 3 days in my original and back to 2 in the other one. But I have been fortunate enough to find a young lady who was working in another practice in Ohio who wasn't happy there. And I had hired a hygienist that had been working in that practice with her who also wasn't happy.
Oh, nice.
She had talked to this associate and said, hey, this is a good deal out here. You should check this out. So I got in touch with her, and she started 3 weeks ago, and by all accounts has been phenomenal. She's 3 years out of school, so she doesn't need, babysitting. She knows what she's doing. And so she has been working in that practice. She's working there 4 days a week. And then I have now flipped my schedule to the work in the third practice where the retiree has retired. And so now I work out there 2 days a week, and I work in my original one 3 days a week until I can find an associate for my third practice.
Okay.
Which is where I'm at today.
So, first of all, congratulations. Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But people think acquiring practices and doing some of these things is a cakewalk, right? Or this is the measure of the success. And I am a multi-practice owner. Okay. And the biggest challenges are people showing up, right? Just like your team, same thing. And then how do you go about coaching and counseling and helping and mentoring young doctors, right?
Sure.
And then finding people who want the same things at the practices. They fit in, culture of the practice, the vision of the practice, the mission, etc. So it's no easy thing. And then also now you've got 3 compressors you got to worry about. You got 3 suction units. You got 3 roofs that could leak, et cetera, et cetera. It's not always the best pathway. But what are some of the things you've learned along the way so far?
Well, and you're also dealing with 3 sets of staff. I mean,
Oh,
you're
so you
going
don't share? Staff don't?
a little bit. I do a little bit, but
Because
when
that
you
helps.
it does help. It helps a ton. But when you're talking of, my original office when I moved here, we were, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There were six staff and myself.
Yeah.
I'm now up to, I think, 20 staff members between the 3 offices.
Oh, yeah. All 3
Yeah,
offices, not the
yes,
one. You
you're
didn't go to
talking
20
about,
in one.
tripling the number of payroll that you have to do, the number of, I mean, not a day goes by that I don't get a text from somebody in one of the offices with some issue.
Yeah, forgot to punch it.
Yeah, I can't do this. Yeah, I need my time clock changed. I need this day off. It's constant and it's every day. But at the same time, there's nowhere else that I've practiced up to this point where I was going to go and buy a practice for $200,000 that could do 800 to $1 million. No, nowhere. I mean, that practice doesn't exist anywhere else that I've ever been.
Right, but
But
go ahead.
Well, but because there is a lack of providers here, because there is a need, because it's, because of where it's situated rurally, there are deals to be had on practices like the ones that I've purchased that I don't believe. I mean, I believe that you can get these deals in multiple places throughout the country, but they're all in rural settings like this one. You're not going to find this in Phoenix or Dallas. I mean, if you are, it's a shell of nothing that works and no patients. You're not finding a working practice for that amount of money, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, talk a little bit about, because we talked about this before we started recording, what you find the difference of how you practice.
So what I think that I enjoy the most about practicing here is that I don't have to be a salesman. And I've never been big on that anyway. I've never been big on selling this case or selling that case. What what I have the luxury of doing here is giving people their options and washing my hands of it and saying, whatever you want to do, we can do. My livelihood isn't gonna live or die if that guy does that crown or not. Like, I'm not that thin. If they don't want to do the crown and want to take the tooth out, no problem. We can do that.
Well, remember your comment about needs? You need them, they need you. What was
Yes,
that comment?
absolutely. It is a supply and demand issue. Everywhere else I've practiced, the patients are the ones that are in demand. Everybody's fighting over 5 new patients a month. And it's a race to the bottom. It's, can I be the cheapest to get people in, or can I be open the most number of hours to get people in? Whereas here, I'm the one in demand. There's only so many dentists to see. I had a new patient in yesterday, and he came in. We were able to get him in a couple of days. I've always told my staff, get people in a couple of days, day or two. And he said, oh, I've called 4 or 5 dentists and they couldn't see me for 6 months. Now, I believe those practices are running fairly inefficiently if you can't get somebody in that amount of time. But there's enough people here and so few of us practicing that we're the ones that are in demand. And that's a different game. That's a completely different game than having to fight over a group of patients that, they'll walk in a second if you don't take their insurance. In both of my second and my third practices were both heavily involved with insurance. And the day I bought them, I got rid of every single one except for Delta. It's the only one I kept.
So I was gonna ask you that, because if you have a difference in how you're practicing in any of those 3 offices, right? So let's say you're out of network in this one, but you're in network in that one. Those patients are going to figure it out and go there because they know it's going
Correct.
to be.
And that's why
So
I couldn't.
it completely defeats the entire purpose of what you're
Yeah. So for me, it all has to be the same. And I remember telling my hygienist, I said, listen, guys, I said, we're going to take this on the chin here for a little bit. I said, because what's going to happen is it's the you don't take my insurance routine, and then they're going to say, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. No problem. We understand. The problem is they're going to pick up the phone and call. Nobody can get them in for 6 months that does take their insurance. And then once they do get in, it's a rigmarole of, oh, you need this and you need that. And all of a sudden it's like, maybe I should just go back to where I was going and pay the $10 it would cost me to get my teeth cleaned. And they, not everybody comes back, but the vast majority of them do, because they only have so many options. And it's not a matter of, screwing the consumer. That's not what I'm talking about here. But again, it's a supply and demand issue. And in rural settings, the dentist is the one that's in demand. So you can make the rules and you can do it the way that you want to do it. You're not beholden to who's marketing for, free exams, who's taking every under the sun that you've got to compete with. And again, it's a race to the bottom.
Well, you've been in these major markets, so you've
Correct.
seen it,
I've
right?
done
You've
it both
seen
ways.
highlighted.
Correct.
Now, what number of patients do you have that you're in network with? A number, ballpark percentages.
As far as like a percentage, I would say probably maybe half, maybe 40%
Okay. So
insurance.
it's a big adjustment if you got rid of that, right?
It would be.
So
It
first
would.
question, if you drop, it happens to be Delta in this case. If you drop
Yes.
Delta in your state, will the check still come to your office?
No.
So you're just like New York State. The check has to go
Correct.
to the subscriber.
Check will go to the patient. And,
Okay.
and quite frequently, all of a sudden, they pocket that check. I've seen that.
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden, hey, you got an outstanding balance. Well, yeah, they sent me the check. Like, yeah, you were supposed to bring that into us. Oh, I thought that was just for me. No,
Okay.
not for you.
Does any other insurance that you have patients in not send a check to you like anybody else, like Blue Cross or?
No, everybody else sends it to us.
So every other insurance company sends a check to your office.
Correct.
Okay.
The between, so we take the Delta, like I said, I offer an in-house plan that's pretty common. They pay a monthly fee and they get a 20% cut on all of our cash fees. It's a great deal.
Cut.
What's
It's a
that?
big cut. 20% is a big cut.
Yeah. It's not as big as the insurance cut. That's 50% in some cases. So for me, I'm still making money even if I take a 20% haircut. And it gives the patients, they feel like they're getting a deal, which they are.
They are, absolutely.
They're getting a deal there and they're paying for it monthly. They get their exams and their cleanings covered. So I have a decent amount of people that sign up for that either their insurance doesn't cover what they want to do or they don't have any.
So as busy as you are, what's your plans? You want to keep that plan or you want to drop that plan?
I would like to drop it. I really would, because I don't agree with what they're doing. I don't agree with how they treat us, and I think we've kind of, again, part of this is on us. We've let them do this. We haven't really taken a stand on
We've
it.
signed up.
And again, the issue, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, but, as the DSO thing continues to grow, and they're all in bed with each other, in my opinion, they're not going to lose that. They're always going to have providers that are going to take the insurance. These DSOs are going to sign up for everything because they're not the ones that have to do the work. If you're the guy that owns the DSO, you're not the one that has to produce and deal with all the crap. I do. So it's very easy for them to say, well, we're going to take all these insurances and we're going to, max this out and open up and, jam the place, but they're not the ones that have to deal with all the headache of it. We do, the providers do. And so, unfortunately, I don't see it going away. I see it getting worse, unfortunately. But the only way you're going to get rid of it are in places like where I'm at. I think it's the only place that it works. And I know there's tons of people out there on Facebook that'll tell they're in major metropolitan areas and they're fee for service and they're doing just fine. Okay. But for every guy that says that, there's 100 guys that are not doing just fine, that are trying to take everything under the sun to compete, because I know them all.
Mm-hmm.
I have a ton of buddies that are doing the exact same thing.
So what's your strategy? What's your plan moving forward?
I'm looking at another practice right now, to be honest. If I can find, and I kind of keep signing up for this, but in my mind, I'm already in it now. I've gone beyond just being a solo practice guy, and I never envisioned myself doing this. I kind of feel like this happened to me. I had a practice fall into my lap that I wasn't going to say no to, that could do 4 times what it's doing or what I paid for it. I'd buy that business anywhere.
Right, but if you don't have the manpower, right?
Correct. And
you can only be in so many places. So you got to be a little bit careful, and you need a little.
Correct.
To me, you need a little, not insurance policy, but you need a little comfort zone.
Well,
or a cushion. You need a little cushion.
That's fair.
So this doc that's in with you, great.
Yeah.
Maybe she has some friends, some other doctors, and maybe she has do you have an interest in selling or partnering or doing anything like that?
I would. I'm pretty flexible that way, because again, I'm in an area that's not a hotbed. I'm not having people banging down my door looking to come to work here. So, I've
But
always been of the
but
mindset that I'd be flexible if somebody wanted to buy and it was the right person. Absolutely, I would.
but think about it though, right? You're how far away from Kentucky and Louisville dental schools?
So I'm an hour and a half from UK, and I'm about 2.5 hours from Louisville.
How far are you from the dental schools in Ohio?
2 hours from Ohio State.
So you have legitimately
Oh yeah.
short drive, plenty of graduates.
I went and lectured at UK and at Louisville last September, and kind of gave them, told them a little bit of my story. More so, what I tried to highlight was I took all of my friends. So I'm on a text thread with 12 other guys that I graduated with. And
Yes, yeah. I got one with up to 20, but yeah.
right. And they're practicing in Phoenix, Utah, Raleigh, Boulder, Colorado. I'm missing one here. Northern Utah, southern Utah. So they're all practicing in heavily populated areas. And part of what I'm telling these kids is, my ratio of people to dentist is astronomically high. I mean, in two of my practices, again, I'm the only dentist in the county. So I'm one dentist for 5,000 people. I'm one dentist for 8,000 people. Whereas in all of these, I mean, in Lexington, in Louisville, in Northern Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati, their ratios are 1 to 900. One dentist for every 900 people, one dentist for every 1,100 people. If we believe the stat that only half the people go to the dentist, that is a tiny population that you have to pull from to make a living from.
Let me ask you this question, because I hear you, and you're a little bit preaching to the choir here. Okay.
Fair enough.
However, I got to get you to drop that insurance, but that's another story. Do you find that the level of respect is different? That you're, quote, actually a doctor in your area as opposed to just a tradesman in the major cities?
Ooh, that's a good question, because don't get me wrong when I say this, and I don't mean it lightly, but I don't take being a dentist very seriously. Meaning, like when I introduce myself using my first name. I'm Dave. Nice to meet you. I'm not Dr. Whitlock. I'm not Dr. Dave. I call myself Dave.
So let me rephrase it.
Sure.
You present a treatment plan to patients in these small towns, and if they say, I'm going to go think about it, they actually go think about it, and they come back and they let you know. As opposed to in a more competitive, larger area, they might say, well, I've been on the internet. I know this, like almost like you're the equivalent of a plumber, as opposed to, I'm not talking about the title, but I'm talking about the position of the doctor in terms of the respect that you're actually.
No, I do feel like that. Yes, the former, meaning I do believe that because I'll tell patients, listen, if you want to go get a second opinion, be my guest. Go and get a second opinion, and you tell me what you think. But I also tell them, you don't have to decide anything today. If you know what you want to do, they've got the schedule up there. They know what works for you. If you don't know what you want to do and you want to come back and talk about it again, I'm more than happy to do that. And I find that, I get a very high case acceptance rate. Very rarely do I think somebody is going somewhere else and getting, quote unquote, a better deal. I really don't find a lot of shopping. Like, hey, I went to so-and-so, and they'll tell you, I went to so-and-so and they quoted me X amount of dollars. So I'm going to come over here, and then they quoted me this and that, and they'll bring all their papers in, and they'll have like 5 different treatment plans. I've seen that before. I don't see that here. I do think that in general, if they like you, they trust you, and that what you tell them to do, they're going to do.
Yeah, I find like we have one office I would say is a little more white collar. One office definitely blue collar. 2 offices are probably flannel jeans and overalls. Okay.
Sure.
And another one is kind of a little bit of a city mix, right? Okay. And each of them have their own unique traits and qualities. But the white collar practice is a little more difficult.
A little more skeptical.
Yeah, difficult. Like, and not for any other reason and I'm probably not describing it well, but if I walk into the other office, for example, well, you could take this tooth out or save it. It's a root canal of this, and here's your options. Here's your costs. Okay, doc, thanks. They come back. All right, let's go ahead and do that root canal.
Yeah.
And, you know, they could be literally came right off the dairy farm.
Sure.
And they just, thanks, doc, got you, or Sonny, whatever. I do the same thing. I introduce myself the same way. I'm 60. I should probably do it a little differently, but too late now. It's
Yeah.
Sonny's girl.
No
And
worries.
if they want to, they call me doc. They want to call me Sonny. I'm good. No problem.
Yeah. I hear both.
But on the other side, that conversation is really, yeah, a root canal. No, you know, how do you know I need that? Like, you know, almost like, I don't know if I believe you. And they might have seen me for years. But
Right.
it's literally like, well, let me look into it. Let me figure it out. And hey, fine. You know, you do what you got to do. It's a different thing. And so our joke is literally, you go in these offices, you're treated like a doctor. You go in these offices, you're a little more like a carpenter or a plumber.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I
Kinda
do
feel.
I have found that I do think people are, at least in these smaller towns, I think they are very trusting. I do, you know, I do believe that the vast majority
Mhm.
believe what I'm telling them. And, you know, I mean, more times than not, they say, well, what would you do if it were you?
Yeah,
This is what I would do if it were me. And they say, okay, I'll do that.
5 minutes. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, treatment plan could take 30 seconds at this
For
point.
sure. Yeah.
Like I always do when they do that to me, I go, it's not really fair because I'm not going to pay the same amount.
That's
You know?
right.
But I will say, yeah, I would. And I said to one person, I go, it depends. We talking about the upper, we talking about the lower. Like, and I was dead serious. I said, I'm dead serious. Like she was talking to me about an implant, a bridge. I said, okay, I'm looking at your case. You have 2 crowns, unneeded tooth, yada, yada. You know, okay. Could do a bridge, you could do an implant. Well, what would you do? I said, well, here's the thing. I don't have those exact same conditions, but if I was missing a tooth in the same area, here's the factors that I would consider, and then that would decide my decision for me. And she thought I was kidding. I was like, no, I'm dead serious. And then she got it, you know, and then she still made her choice.
See, I'm a big time and money guy, meaning I ask them, what's most important to you? Is it most important time-wise to have something permanent in there faster, but might be, you know, this fee? Or I said, you know, this is the better option because you're not messing around with other teeth if you're taking the bridge and implant route.
Yeah.
Said, you're not messing around with other teeth. I said, but it's a longer process and it's a little more expensive. So what, you know, it depends on what's the most important thing to you. Whatever you want to do, I can do.
You know how you can fix that right away?
What's that? Just always
Make
do the implant?
No, make those fees exactly the same.
That's true. So yeah, take money out of it. Just
Right.
do you want an hour later?
That's it.
Yeah, it's true.
You
And
know, so
in my office, to be honest, they're pretty close to the same.
pretty close. Yeah, same
They
here.
are.
And we
Yeah.
did that for a bit. Then we're like, and as the fees change, we're like, now there's a little difference, but I'd always tell people a little difference,
Yeah,
you know?
not enough to where money sways the decision.
All right. So if you're going to drop insurance, let's go cut right to the chase. If you're going to drop your one last insurance, how would you do it?
Well, I would do it cold turkey. I would just do it.
You wouldn't prep them. You wouldn't have conversations with patients. You wouldn't.
No, because to me, I mean, well, I'll put it this way. When I bought the other 2 offices, I did it cold turkey. I just said, all right, you know, we're under new ownership now, basically. And these are the insurances that we take. We can still bill your insurance. You can still come here. But
You took advantage of, there's a change already, right? So there's already a change in ownership. So, hey, let's just, we'll put the 2 changes together and people will have to, and they'll get it. Like, well, okay, new doc, new office. All right.
right.
But now
it's a different story. That's
yeah,
fair.
people are used to it, right? And now you got to say, all right, listen. And you explain it, and you're gonna have to deal with your team and make sure they're on board.
Correct. That they know.
I've talked to so many folks who've been through this, you know, and I think the one thing that works is your mindset. So once you have convinced yourself that this is what you want to do, then everything else is downhill from there.
That's fair.
I fully believe that, man.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. It's tough because, you know, you can always say, well, at least I take one. You know what I mean? At least I'm you know, and to me, it's not I mean, part of it is I'm quote unquote helping the community. You know, there are people that have insurance, and you know, do I want to be the guy that takes no insurance? You know, there's a little bit of fear there for sure. And knowing that there are other providers in town that do take it, you know, so there is a strong possibility they will go somewhere else. You know, and I've been okay with that, with buying the other practices, knowing that people were going to leave solely, like you said, because it's an ownership change, and some people don't want to. I mean, especially in rural communities, people are very adverse to change. They do not like change.
But you got the demand and supply and demand situation, right?
Yes, and that's what I always fall back on is where else are they going to go? Especially in the second and third offices, they're going to drive an hour to go see somebody that's in network over, you know, a $10 copay to get your teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to do that, more power to you.
Here's the other thing I find. A lot of people, there's an epiphany. There's a moment that says, all right, that's it. I'm done with this. Right. And then that creates that propels the mindset change.
Sure.
We are burning the boats. We're not going back. This is how we're doing things.
Yeah.
And it's a fact. And then I think things from there, it's significantly different.
What is the specific catalyst, do you think? Or is there one?
Everyone has a little bit different, you know, like,
Okay.
I mean, Josh Bernstein was one year, they didn't give there was not a fee increase. And he was like, that's it. I'm tired of this. And he decided, and he went cold turkey January, and he didn't do any preparation. Right. Didn't have any plans for the exodus that was going to occur.
Okay.
Right. And he didn't prepare the patient. So there was no explanation. I think the people who are most successful at it is they understand the why and they can explain the why to the patient. Now, if you could tell the patient what the advantage is to them, because I think there's plenty of them, and fully believe it, just like you said, they're going to trust you.
Yeah.
So they're going to trust you if you explain it to them in real terms that when I discuss something with you, it's a treatment for you. No one else should be sitting in this room helping you make those decisions that doesn't have your best interest at heart. Right? So you're dealing with a middleman here. That person's sitting at your negotiation table and all they want to do is the cheapest option possible.
For sure.
Right? So take example, like, you know, you've dealt with Medicaid. Listen, you're missing 4 teeth. You can't do anything. You got to take them out and make a denture.
Yeah.
Like, do you want that decision to be made when there are other choices that you don't even want to hear about now?
Yeah.
You know, so I just think it's handcuffing the ability of doctor-patient relationship, allowing us to at least present to you all of the options and have you make your own decision based on all the factors. You know, and people are, well, I trust them, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen. And I think people that, to me, the people that it's in their soul and DNA, then that's the ones that works, because you're going to have some of your team are going to be like, you know, Mrs. Jones just left, and well, you know, Mrs. Jones for 100 years. She's my next door neighbor. I go bowling with her. What am I going to say to her when we go to Dairy Queen? Like, those conversations, right? But if they're all part of it and understand it and believe it, some will be harder than others. Then it'll work, and it'll work well. Because you leave the room, they're going to turn and look at your sister and say, all right, why are you guys doing this?
Yeah. What's the story?
Yeah.
That's true.
I heard the spiel. Now what's the deal? You know? So
Fair enough.
it can be done. I've had, you know, people in this podcast that 70% of their practice, 75% of their practice. And they had a very methodical way and they went about doing it. And they're all a little bit different, but the most important thing to me is the mindset. Is absolutely saying to yourself, this is it. We are going. And like you said, there's hesitancy because you're not there yet.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Oh boy, I'm the only one in the area, and the service to the community. And that is a hurdle, you know, mentally. It's nothing else but mindset. So,
well, and it's easy to see what the benefits are for us, meaning, you know,
you got to put it in their terms. What's
you're going to lose. I mean, you know, when they hear it, they think, well, obviously that's good for you, Dennis, because you're going to make more money. And, you know, that's always where their mind's going to go. But yeah, it's that ability to then say to them, this is how it benefits you, us not doing this anymore.
Right. And that's a fact.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And
I
if
mean,
you get,
you're not making it up.
Yeah.
You know, this is a hard decision, but honestly, these are the things that are getting, because I don't like the argument that goes the financial one that says, listen, we haven't had a fee increase. You know, listen, you're a rich dentist.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're not going to cry. They're not going to bat an eyelash.
You're a rich dentist and
money. That's right. 100%.
And I don't care where you practice. Now there are some people like, well, patients understand, you know, finances, and I get that, but that's not really what I'm talking about. For most patients, when I talk about their treatment plan, I don't care about the dollars. I'm going to talk about the treatment plan based on strictly what they can do for their own improvements.
Sure.
You know, finances is other. Now, the byproduct of which should be better, but in the end, the byproduct for that patient should be, I have autonomous decision-making, right? And I don't have anybody else telling me, you know, the least cheap, you know, what is it? The least, you know, most favorable treatment option
Yeah.
versus the least cost expensive. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and the insurance companies know how to write it. Like, for example, preferred provider. How is that a preferred? How are you preferred? What do you preferred? You signed up on a plan.
Right.
I ain't preferred. I just signed up and I agreed to all the limitations and exclusions that are part of your plan. That's what I did. That doesn't make me preferred.
Yeah.
I mean, did I have to pass a test? Do you have to have all these degrees? Do I have to be a CE junkie? No.
No.
I got to sign up to that plan. And
Sign the
accept
paper.
accept
good.
it. That's it. But
Yeah.
it's a preferred provider.
Sure.
So, out of network. Who wants to be out of anything versus, listen, we're an unrestricted provider. That's kind of a common term I hear a lot.
Oh,
Makes
okay.
sense.
Yeah. I haven't heard
Right?
that one.
It's trying to get the narrative back a little bit where it's not so tainted, because if you go out of network, there's going to be a letter that's going to come and it's going to tell everybody that you're
You go see somebody else.
yeah, and that that you're money grubbing, whatever.
That's
Or
right.
certainly going to apply it in certain ways, but
Yes, they are.
it's a game. It's a total game.
Well, and I guess that's the part about it that disappoints me the most, is that it's not a relationship where it's like, okay, provider, we as an insurance company value you as a provider, so we're going to take care of you. It's quite the opposite.
No.
They treat you like trash and then expect you to just keep taking fee decreases and,
Yeah.
keep signing up for their stuff. Like, I don't get that.
Mhm. Well,
That's the
and
situation.
that's the other conversation with patients, right? I mean, our relationship, we have a relationship. My goal is to see you have optimum health. Their goal is to not spend 5 cents on your care.
Correct.
Period.
Yeah.
And their responsibility is to their shareholders to make a profit.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's first in priority, so let's follow the Benjamins, right? Always is.
True story.
All right. So let's wrap this up. Got to ask you a final question.
Sure.
You could go back in time anywhere, time, place. Where would you go?
Meaning within my dental career?
In your life, or not even in your life. You want to go back to watch the pyramids be built. You do that. You do whatever.
Whoa.
History buff, man. You got a
Oh,
wide open slate, man. You can go watch Genghis Khan. You can go see Julius Caesar. You can do anything you want.
If I could go back to any time, I think I would go back to the 1950s. I would have loved to have grown up as a kid in the 50s. I think it was a simpler time. I think it was, I don't know. That's when I feel like America was probably at its peak. I don't know.
Go to the hop. You could go to the hop.
Oh yeah, grow to be like a kid in the 50s and then be like a teenager in the 60s. I'm a car guy. So I feel like the 60s, the greatest cars ever made were made.
57 Chevy.
Yeah. A 56 Ford pickup is my favorite car. I've got a 65 Mustang out of my garage right now.
Oh, sweet. What kind
know,
is it? A fastback? What does it look like?
No, it's convertible
Okay.
coupe, all original, inline six. I mean, I'm the third owner and I know the other two owners. One of them was my uncle and one of it was the gentleman who bought it brand new, who gave it to my uncle. And I bought it from him a year ago.
That's a true car guy right here, boy.
Oh man, it's the best. So, if I could go back, I mean, I think that's when it was the goods.
Fantastic. Well, David, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's get back together, please. Hit me up in like 6 months. Let's see where you're at, what you're doing. Let's see if that fourth app has happened.
Sure.
See if anything happens with some of the recent grads, because we're kind of at that point now where some graduates have happened and maybe things don't work out for them and they start looking for something in your neck of the woods.
That would be ideal. I
Can't
appreciate
go
you
wrong.
having me on. Let me tell the story. It's quite a story, in my opinion.
Oh, it's a great story, man.
Wild
I've
story.
never heard so many lows and pitfalls I've ever heard in my life. Pitfalls. Oh my
Wild.
God.
It's been wild.
Yeah, I would almost say, well, tell me where you're going, because I'm going to go across the street.
Yeah, as I say,
opposite.
stay away.
Guess what? Hey, David just bought IBM stock. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going
Buy
into
Apple.
this one.
Yeah. Yeah, go by the opposite.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, appreciate it.
your
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks for listening to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee for service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee-for-Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.